Hello and welcome to the Watchful Magpie. Today I'm going to look at 10 of my watches in my collection which do things a little differently, a little bit more weird or strange or just plain different. And when I started collecting, I tended to do that. I looked for watches that did something different for every single watch. So I've picked 10. Let's have a look. First up, we're going to look at 4 chronographs. We've got a Casio here, a Casio Red Bull, a Swatch that you may never have seen, and a Bulova. So let's take those one by one. So first, this Casio, let me give it a wipe so you can actually see what happens now. I went through this phase of having chronographs a lot, and so I've set this to, I believe it is in, well, let me just check, it is in, no, let me put it in stopwatch mode. And what I really like is this little wheel on the left hand side, so there it goes, it zeroes it. Now what I haven't done is calibrate the hands on the right hand sub-dial, which I need to do really in theory, but I'm not going to do it this time. But let's have a look at how this works. Look at that left sub-dial spinning and rotating back. And this is one of the first Casio watches that actually measured thousandths of a second. So the red hand is actually measuring tenths of a second, and the other one that's rotating slower is actually doing hundredths of a second. So I thought that was pretty cool, and obviously it can be difficult to read. I certainly find it difficult to read. I find it even more difficult to calibrate. Not impossible, just needs a lot of instructions, and as I've got around about 27 Casio watches, I don't always remember. On to the next one, which is the other chronograph. This is a Red Bull, and I really quite like this one. It's got lots of weirdness about it. It has the date at the sort of, well, 7:30 o'clock position, which is strange. It has an AM PM indicator that's blue and red over on the right hand side. I've put it in stopwatch mode because if you look at the sub dial at the bottom near the 6 o'clock position, keep your eyes on it. Look at that, it has a pendulum kind of movement to it, and I thought that was pretty funky. I haven't seen that in any other watch. I'm sure there are other watches in the universe that do it, but I hadn't come across them. I thought that was very cool. And if I zero it, it works. If I go back to time mode, I can do that as well. It'll just go back to doing what it normally does. Oh, I've started off in stopwatch again. Let's move on. We're going to go on to the Swatch next. This one is one I have never ever seen again. I can't even remember where I bought it. I do know I bought it around about 8 to 10 years ago. I do wear it. I love it. It's got a leather strap, and you know, you can change the batteries yourself. It's a very cool, well, I think it's very cool anyway. Very cool little number, and it's pretty shiny, pretty glossy, and it's got an interesting, not a guilloche dial exactly, but several registers on it. So we have all the usual stuff, but the thing I wanted to show you here is the flyback on the second hand. Now it measures from 0 to 30 seconds, then flies back, so I thought I'd save us some time by getting it to do the first 24-ish. So if I start that off now, you see that's the stopwatch going, and as soon as it hits 30, 29, 30, there we go, we go back to that. And that's pretty funky, I thought. I haven't seen, I say, anything like that. I'm sure there were, well, I know there were other flyback stopwatches, but I thought this was a particularly cool watch. I was amazed that it was a Swatch, and I must say, it has lasted the test of time. It's been abused, it's been chucked in drawers, it's been worn a lot, and you know what? It just keeps carrying on, and it's not even scratched up. So, love that movement. Right, moving on to the last chronograph, and let's give it a wipe as well. This is the Bulova, and I'm sure you've seen these in various places. I think they must be one of the most unpopular Bulova watches in the entire universe, because they are always in shop windows, never out of stock, never discounted, and always around about 500 British pounds, so it's $700. It depends. I got this in the US. So in this case, there are a number of things I like about this, but this is particularly special because it does thousandths of a second. So if we look at that top there's a red hand there. You can barely see because it's moving so fast. It's doing hundredths of a second. At the bottom, we have a register doing thousandths of a second. So if I stop that, you see that little red hand there at the top register, and the precisionist hand at the 6 o'clock position saying 2,000ths of a second. If I start it off again, you just can't see it unless you do it in slow motion, which is pretty amazing. So very cool, very unusual. Overall, as a watch, if I want to put that back to watch mode, you see the precisionist is super smooth because of its very high frequency movement. The quartz is actually 3 times faster than pretty much everything else. You see that it's so silky smooth. So moving on to very different stuff, I think. First, I'm going to start off with a Nubio watch. I don't know if you've come across this brand, but Nubio are, in fact, they kind of border on the Swiss geography, I think. They are an interesting brand. They are very young, and they produce what I would describe as intriguing watches, but they are kind of on the big side. So if you've got a very large wrist, this is ideal. This, I think, is around about 48 or 50 millimeters. It's called a Satellite 2. Most of their watches are actually limited edition. I love this one for multiple reasons. I think the dial is quite special and catches the light in a beautiful way. This is a wandering hour watch in that the hour is represented in that dial, the minutes with the usual minute hand, but it's kind of like a semi-digital, and as it goes round, it will change the hour as soon as it gets to the top. So let me just do that for you to demonstrate exactly how that works, because it is kind of fun. So it gets to the top, and you see as I get to the top, it moves to the 6th position. If I went round one more hour, it hits the 7, and there's a little peg that physically turns that black wheel. So I've had many compliments about this particular watch. I think it's great fun. I think it's really easy to read, but it is pretty giant. That's the only thing, as I say. On to a slightly different style again, where we have a jumping hour watch. Now, many of you may have come across this brand, perhaps in AliExpress, Pierre Paulin. I think it's just a made-up name, really, but it doesn't matter. This actually works really nicely, and as you see, there's quite a lot of detail in the actual face bit guillotine going on there. And this is a jump hour watch because the hour is represented just at the 12 o'clock position there. He says putting his hand in the wrong place, and the minutes there, and there is a subdial reflecting the seconds. So it really does jump. So if we again take this and move it forwards to the 60 position, if I hold it a little bit closer to the camera and I move that forward, you see it jumps to 6. So if I can also go backwards, you see it kind of does it really quickly, and I quite like this one. It's sort of a really gentle one. I'm going to put it back to the right time in this particular case, which is 17:51 here. Next up is a Xeric, and I'm sure if you're from the US, you've come across the Xeric before. They produce very interesting watches. This one is called a regulator watch, and what that actually shows us is we have a hand for the hour on one post, we have the minute hand on a different post, and the seconds on a different post. And this is open heart in that you can see the movement sitting behind it. Now, I've never owned a regulator before, and I kind of find the ones that I did see, because the hand, the hour and the second were in totally different positions, I find it far too difficult to read on many others. And I think it's Seiko of a few, but this one I actually find readable. You know, you can see where the minutes are, the hour is readable, and it certainly gets a lot of comments from people going, how on earth do you read the time with that? But actually, do you know what? It's pretty easy. It's also quite a nice thin watch. I like the shape. You can see through it, has a Xeric rotor customized there. So quite an interesting one again. We go on to a very old watch that I've had, and this is around about 12 years old. This is from the beautiful horologer Emporio, I can't even say it, Emporio Armani. So not, you know, it's a dress watch that I saw and thought that's pretty cool. Still haven't seen anything like this one. Magical in that it's got a pointer date, which, you know, this still works, by the way. It's an automatic. You can see the movement behind there. It has a very curved profile. It's quite big. but you can actually, or used to be able to set the year, which is at the bottom. In this case, it's gone back to 2005, I believe. It only goes up to 2013. So there you go, planned obsolescence, but you get the day, you get the month, and the pointer at the top is telling you what day of the month it is. This is probably the most complicated watch I have in my collection. It's so complicated that I can't set quite a lot of the functions. It's got quite a lot of them, one of which is, and I don't know if you can hear this, it's a minute repeater, so it chimes. And as you see, we've got an indicator for the day of the week, but we also have 2 alarms, and we have 2 time zones and a second hand function as well. What looks to be the second hand is actually a date pointer hand, pointing at today's date, the 25th. It's actually July when I'm filming this. We also have a sub register down at the bottom that will tell me a second time zone if I press one button. It'll also tell me if there's a leap year and what year we're in a phase of a leap year. We have a 24-hour clock in terms of where as we advance towards 24 hours, and we have a little miniature second hand as well. Quite an unusual watch, and when I went to a watch fair recently and approached the Accura stand, they were dazzled. They haven't actually seen one of these, and I bought this 11 years ago. It's ferociously complicated, as I said, to set anything with the hour, and literally when I run out of a battery, which takes about 2 or 3 years in fact, I take it to someone who can do that. It gets sent away, and thankfully they set the entire thing up for me properly again. It comes with a minute manual, but I love this watch. It was a present to me from my father. I say it's the only chiming minute repeater that I've got now. I did have a Breitling Aerospace minute repeater, but I've broken that unfortunately. So love this. Very different, but as I say, ridiculously complicated. Not sure you'll see something as, what's the word, with as many complications on it as this Accurist. Last but not least, are you serious, you're saying? Well, I know it's a Quartz Mundane, but it's actually called a Quartz Mundane Backlight. I hadn't come across this. I always wanted one of these Mundanes because it looks very like a Swiss kind of station clock, which is the model it works off. But I'll show you what it does in the dark, because that's the only way to see it. Now, as I introduce a UV light here, you can see that the lume is actually in the underside of the hands, which is quite remarkable really, and very, very cool in the actual dark, because it lasts quite a significant amount of time. There we go, I'll take that away and shade it for you so you can see. So that gives it a silhouette effect, and I've never seen anything like that ever again, really. I've had this probably about 4 or 5 years, and as I say, what a great idea. What a really clever way of kind of using the lume without illuminating or putting lume spots on the face. Just really clever. So I thought that was one to have, and so it lives in my collection. And yes, I do wear it. It's more of a dressy watch, but it's kind of fun, especially if you're going out at night. So thanks for joining me and my little walk through my kind of more weird and strange watches. I'll probably go through another couple of collections that I've got to see if that is fun for you as well. I know I did my summer collection recently. I'm looking at dress watches probably next. That'll be fun. I seem to have more dive watches than I have anything else. I've always kind of liked those. But in the meantime, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, I'd appreciate a like and a subscribe. It helps the channel get some exposure, and I'm just doing this for fun. I'm just an enthusiast. I'd also love to hear what weird and wonderful watches you've come across or you actually own, because that's part of the discovery process, isn't it? I wouldn't have found some of these if I hadn't seen them myself on YouTube or somebody hadn't told me about them. So until the next time, thanks very much indeed for your attention. Glad you made it to the end.